So picture this. You're standing in your kitchen, maybe making some tea, mug in hand, and you're faced with that classic choice, white sugar or that lovely golden honey. You reach for the honey, right? Because, well, it feels better. It's natural, ancient, made by bees. It just seems like it has to be the healthier option. But is that feeling, based on solid fact? Or is it maybe just a sweet tasting illusion we've bought into? That everyday moment, that little diet dilemma, it's actually the perfect setup for a fact or fad deep dive. Today, we're going to try and cut through some of those sticky myths and hopefully give you some real clarity.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really what we're aiming for here, to kind of move past the shiny marketing, the whispers you hear in diet culture, and actually dig into what's really happening inside your body when you choose one over the other. We're going to put both honey and, regular table sugar under the scientific microscope, so to speak. We'll break down what they're actually made of, molecule by molecule, trace how your body processes them step by step, and really look hard at whether those famed trace amounts of nutrients in honey genuinely make a meaningful health difference. The goal is that by the end of this, you'll have a much clearer, evidence-based handle on the why behind that choice you make at the counter.
Okay, let's unpack this then, because to really get the debate today, I think we kind of need to know where these things even came from. Their histories are somewhat different, and that seems to massively shape how we see them now.
Oh, absolutely. It's crucial context. For, like, the vast majority of human history, intense sweetness was incredibly rare, a real treat, honey.
Wow.
While honey is arguably our oldest sweetener, it's deeply woven into our past, we've found, believe it or not, 8,000-year-old cave paintings in Spain.
Wow, 8,000 years.
Yep, showing humans harvesting honey from wild hives. It wasn't just food either. It was medicine, a
Yeah.
preservative. It was even used in ceremonies across, well, loads of ancient cultures. Egyptians, Greeks, you name it. So
Sure.
that whole natural ancient vibe, that's a huge part of why we like it today. It feels primal, pure, untouched by big industry.
Right, it connects us to something older. Feels authentic. So that's honey, a taste of deep history. But then you have refined sugar. That feels like a completely different story, much more modern, doesn't it?
It's a really stark contrast, yeah. Table sugar, or sucrose, that comes from sugar cane or sugar beets. Now, growing sugar cane is ancient too, but refining it into those little white crystals we use, that's much, much newer. For centuries, even after it was refined, sugar was this like super extravagant luxury. Only the absolute wealthiest could afford it, kings and queens.
A status symbol almost.
Totally, a sign of immense wealth. It wasn't until the 18th and 19th centuries, with industrialization,
Hmm.
everything changed. Suddenly, sugar became cheap, mass-produced
Well,
everywhere. And that's when our collective sweet tooth just exploded. This massive increase in consumption happened relatively recently. And that connection, to modern industry, mass production, and let's be honest, overconsumption.
yeah.
That's a big reason sugar gets such a bad rap today.
Okay, let's switch gears to the science then, the nitty gritty. When we talk nutrition and sugar, we mean simple carbs. To really get the honey versus sugar thing, we need to meet the actual molecules involved. You mentioned Lego blocks before.
Right, that's a great analogy. So the two main Lego blocks of sweetness are glucose and fructose. Glucose is like the body's go-to fuel. The basic block almost every cell can use directly for energy. When you eat carbs, your body works to break them down into glucose. Fructose is another simple sugar. People often call it fruit sugar. It tastes sweeter than glucose, actually. But here's the really key difference, how your body handles it. Fructose gets processed almost entirely by your liver. That's its main destination.
Okay, so two main blocks. Glucose for general energy, fructose heading mainly to the liver. How do table sugar and honey use these blocks?
Well, table sugar sucrose is neat and tidy. It's a disaccharide, di meaning two. So it's two sugar blocks chemically stuck together, exactly 50% glucose, 50% fructose. In the Lego analogy, it's like one piece made of a glucose block permanently glued to a fructose block. When you eat it, an enzyme in your gut has to snap that bond apart before you can absorb the individual glucose and fructose.
Okay, so it needs that extra step. What about honey?
Honey's more rustic. An artisanal blend, you could say. It's mostly monosaccharides, mono meaning one. So these are free-floating, separate sugar blocks, already broken down, essentially. Composition-wise, it's roughly 30% glucose and a bit under 40% fructose. They're already separate, the rest. About 17% is water, plus small amounts of other complex sugars, and then those famous trace bits, pollen, enzymes, amino acids, vitamins, minerals. So instead of that bonded pair, honey is like a bag full of separate glucose and fructose Legos, plus a few other interesting bits mixed in.
And you mentioned agave nectar earlier. Where does that fit in quickly? People often see that as healthy.
Right, good point. A quick but important detour on agave. It's basically a fructose bomb, a real fructose heavyweight,
Hmm.
it could be up to like 85% fructose, super high. And remembering that high fructose level is going to be really important in a minute when we talk about metabolism, especially the liver's role.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Metabolism. Does my body care if the glucose and fructose arrive neatly bonded in sugar or as those free singles in honey? Once they're broken down, does it matter?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the short answer is, metabolically speaking, once sucrose is snapped apart, not really. Your body pretty much treats an individual glucose molecule the same, whether it came from honey or table sugar. Same for fructose. The real difference, the crucial distinction, is how your body handles glucose versus how it handles fructose, because they take wildly different paths. So glucose enters your bloodstream. Predictably, blood sugar goes up. That rise signals your pancreas. Release insulin. Insulin acts like a key. It travels around, unlocks cell doors, lets glucose in so the cells can use it for energy right away. It's this, beautifully regulated body-wide system for managing your main fuel.
But fructose skips that whole insulin step you said, takes a detour.
It totally does. A completely different route. Fructose doesn't really trigger much insulin release, and most of your cells can't just grab it and use it for energy like they do with glucose. Instead, it makes like a beeline straight for the liver. Your liver is basically the only organ really equipped to handle fructose in large amounts. It's the metabolic traffic controller for fructose. Now, the liver can convert fructose into glucose for energy or store it as glycogen, which is stored glucose. That's fine. But, and this is the absolute kicker, if the liver's glycogen stores are already full, if it doesn't need more immediate energy, it converts that excess fructose directly into fat, specifically triglycerides.
Ah, okay. And that sounds like where the potential problems start, especially with modern diets high in sweeteners.
That's central to so many modern health issues, yes. Look, a little bit of fructose from, say, a whole apple, that's generally fine. You've got fiber slowing things down, the dose is manageable. But when we guzzle down large amounts of concentrated fructose from sweeteners, be it sugar, honey, high fructose corn syrup, agave, we can easily overwhelm the liver's capacity to handle it properly. Over time, this constant conversion of excess fructose to fat can contribute to things like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, literally fat building up in your liver. It can also contribute to insulin resistance, where your cells stop responding well to insulin signal, and elevated triglycerides in your blood. Those are all major risk factors for heart disease, type 2 diabetes.
So the agave thing makes more sense now, too.
Exactly, the agave paradox. It got popular because it has a very low glycemic index. It doesn't spike blood sugar much.
Because the fructose doesn't trigger insulin.
Precisely. So people thought, oh, low GI must be healthy.
Right.
But they missed the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
That massive fructose load was going straight to the liver, potentially causing problems down the line there. It's a perfect example of focusing on one single metric, like GI, without seeing the whole metabolic picture. We love simple good-bad labels, but biology is rarely that simple.
Right. Okay, so we've got the chemistry down. We understand the different metabolic routes. That's super helpful. Now, armed with that, let's tackle those common beliefs head on. The health halos. What's the first big one you think we need to address?
Well, probably the biggest one, the most common justification I hear is, honey is healthier because it has vitamins and minerals. And look, technically, yes, it does. But the reality is, it's practically irrelevant from a nutritional standpoint.
Practically irrelevant. How so?
Honey does contain trace amounts, and I mean trace of things like potassium, calcium, some B vitamins, various antioxidants. But the amounts are absolutely minuscule. Negligible, really. Think about it. A tablespoon of honey has about 17 grams of sugar, 64 calories. To get even a tiny fraction of your recommended daily intake for any significant vitamin or mineral from honey alone, you'd have to eat a huge amount, an unhealthy amount of sugar and calories.
So you'd overload on sugar way before you got any real vitamin benefit.
Exactly. Chasing vitamins in honey is, well, it's just not a sensible strategy. The antioxidant argument is similar. The benefit is tiny compared to the sugar load. You are far, far better off getting those nutrients and antioxidants from actual nutrient-dense foods. Vegetables, berries, nuts, seeds, green tea.
Yeah.
That's what the real payoff is.
Okay, that puts the vitamin claim into perspective pretty clearly. What about the allergy thing? That raw local honey helps with seasonal allergies. You hear that a lot.
Yes. The local honey for allergies theory is a nice idea, isn't it? Sort of poetic. The thinking goes that eating local honey exposes you to tiny amounts of local pollen, acting like a natural form of immunotherapy, desensitizing you over time. But unfortunately, the scientific evidence for this is, well, it's very weak. At best.
Why is that?
A couple of reasons. First, most seasonal allergies, The itchy eyes, sneezing kind, are caused by fine, wind-borne pollen. Think trees, grasses, ragweed. The pollen in honey comes mainly from flowers that bees visit. It's heavier, stickier, designed to be carried by bees, not wind. Often these aren't the pollens causing the allergies. Second, the actual amount of pollen in honey is incredibly small and varies wildly. While maybe one or two tiny preliminary studies showed a possible hint of something, larger, better designed studies haven't found any significant benefit compared to a placebo. So while it feels like it should work, the science just doesn't really back it up strongly.
Okay, another common belief bites the dust. What about the general natural argument? Because it's natural, my body processes it better than, say, processed white sugar. Any truth there?
Yeah, that natural argument is powerful, but metabolically. Now, not really in the way people hope.
Yeah.
As we kind of established, once it's broken down, your body's machinery doesn't fundamentally distinguish a fructose molecule from honey versus one from high fructose corn syrup or table sugar. Sugar is sugar at that molecular level once it hits your bloodstream and liver. Now, honey does have a slightly lower glycemic index than table sugar, typically around 58 for honey, maybe 65 for sugar.
So it raises blood sugar a tiny bit slower.
A tiny bit, yes. But that difference is generally considered too small to have a major noticeable impact on your overall metabolic health, especially considering typical portion sizes. The main takeaway really has to be that your body sees both honey and sugar primarily as significant sources of added sugar, with all the downstream metabolic effects that come with consuming too much. The natural label doesn't bypass that basic reality.
Wow. Okay, so bringing it all back to that kitchen counter, that moment of choice. You've picked the honey for your tea instead of the sugar. Bottom line, have you made a genuinely healthier choice?
The honest, science-backed answer. Only marginally, like really marginally, and in ways that are pretty unlikely to make a significant difference to your overall health in the long run. Yes. Okay, honey has that tiny smidgen of antioxidants we mentioned, and that slightly lower GI. So if you were literally forced to choose between 1 teaspoon of honey and 1 teaspoon of sugar, and all else is equal, then yes, the honey is, by a razor-thin margin, the slightly better option. And of course, let's not forget flavor. Honey has a unique taste many people prefer, and enjoying your food matters too.
A razor-thin margin. That really puts it starkly. So for someone who just genuinely loves the taste of honey, that preference is maybe the main actual benefit compared to sugar, assuming they're being moderate anyway.
You've absolutely nailed a core point there. Beyond that subtle flavor preference and the microscopic nutritional edge, the really crucial takeaway, the thing to cut through the noise, is this. Your body processes the sugar in honey and the sugar in your sugar bowl in remarkably similar ways. Both are concentrated sources of added sugar. Both contribute calories. Both need to be consumed in moderation, regardless of the natural or processed label. Honestly, swapping one for the other without actually reducing how much total added sugar you eat, it's like meticulously rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Okay. Vivid analogy.
The real win, the thing that actually moves the needle for your health, isn't about picking the perfect type of sugar. It's about reducing the total amount you consume overall.
This whole honey versus sugar thing, it really shines a light on a bigger trend, doesn't it? This relentless search for the perfect sweetener.
It absolutely does. And that search has fueled the massive rise of non-nutritive sweeteners. Things like stevia, monk fruit, erythritol, aspartame, sucralose. The list goes on. They promise the sweetness we crave, but without the calories or the immediate blood sugar spike of regular sugar. But the science here is still very much evolving. It's complicated. While they're generally deemed safe by regulatory bodies, there's ongoing research and some debate about their long-term effects. Questions about, say, the gut microbiome, how they might affect it, or appetite regulation. Do they trick our brains and maybe make us crave more sweetness overall?
Or maybe make fruit taste less sweet.
Potentially, yes.
Do they-
Do they reinforce our desire for hyper-intense sweetness,
Yes.
making the natural sweetness in whole foods seem kind of bland by comparison? These are complex questions without easy answers, yet it highlights how easily we can get sidetracked looking for a magic bullet replacement instead of addressing the root issue. We'll definitely need to tackle that in a future deep dive.
So maybe the real future isn't about finding that one perfect, guilt-free sweetener after all. It sounds like it might be something more fundamental. It reminds me of people switching from regular soda to diet soda, still chasing that intense sweet hit, just without the sugar calories. It feels like maybe we're missing the bigger picture about retraining our taste buds.
Exactly. Precisely. The most impactful future, the sustainable one, probably lies in shifting our whole mindset, moving away from asking, which sugar is the least bad, and towards asking, how can we, collectively and individually, reduce our reliance on intense sweetness altogether? And this isn't about deprivation, not at all. It's more about re-education, retraining our palates, learning to truly appreciate and even prefer the more subtle, complex, natural sweetness you find in whole foods, berries, fruit, even some vegetables like carrots or beets, and then using added sugars, whether it's honey, maple syrup, table sugar, whatever, more sparingly, more mindfully, as an occasional enjoyment, not an everyday necessity.
So instead of getting stuck agonizing over which sweetener is technically better by a tiny margin, we can actually use this knowledge to feel empowered to make choices that are genuinely right for us.
Absolutely. That's the goal. Look, enjoy that rich flavor of honey if you really love it. Use sugar in that family baking recipe you cherish. That's fine. But the key is to do it mindfully, consciously, knowing what it is you're consuming and how it fits into your overall diet. The aim isn't finding some kind of guilt-free pass to eat unlimited sugar. It's about understanding the science, what honey and sugar are, what they do in your body. That knowledge gives you the power to make truly informed decisions that align with your own health goals, building a solid foundation of wellness that lasts, instead of just chasing the latest fad or marketing claim.
So maybe the real challenge, the provocative thought to leave people with, isn't really about choosing honey or sugar, but maybe it's about redefining our whole relationship with sweetness itself. What if the most powerful choice isn't which sweetener we use, but questioning how much intense sweetness we actually desire and thinking about how we can cultivate a palate that genuinely appreciates, maybe even prefers, the more subtle natural sweetness found in real whole foods? Definitely something to mull over next time you reach for that sugar bowl or the honey jar.